Hey, Greg here, founder of www.wrestling-divas.webs.com, your source for highlighting the most beautiful and deadly entertainers in professional wrestling. My next special guest was trained by the likes of Matt Taven and Brian Fury, and although just passing her first year in the professional wrestling industry as an active wrestler, she is quickly establishing herself as one of the top managers and professional wrestlers in the New England area. So I would like to welcome my next special guest, Kasey Ray. Hi, Kasey. How are you?
Hi, good. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Well, the first thing I would like to cover before we get in depth of your career is that you had a very athletic background while you were growing up, much like a lot of people in this industry. But what intrigues me is kind of how you came to choose wrestling over any other athletic background or industry or field. So what was it about wrestling that appealed to you as opposed to, let's say, boxing or MMA or something like that?
Well, I think what appealed to me the most about, versus going into anything else with picking wrestling was just that it combined everything that I liked. It combined the athleticism, it combined, the gymnastics, it combined the acting, it combined the entertainment, it combined everything that I was doing at that time, and it kind of all put it into one thing. And the couple of times that I watched it when I was younger, I never really thought of actually doing it myself because I always thought these girls were monsters. I looked at them as, yes, we're talking about, China, those types of women that I was watching. Yes, they are big, but when I started watching it later on, in my teen years, I was like, oh, no, I could never do this. These girls are so tall. They're all models. And then I come to find out, yes, that is the case for some of them, but it's not the case for all of them. So that finally gave me the push into going into it, but it just combined everything I liked into one thing. That's a hard thing to find.
Well, definitely, and it certainly has a performance background. It's wrestling is very theatrical, but everyone knows it's a male-dominated industry, and even though women are becoming more and more prevalent in the field of wrestling, when you go to train or when you go to these classes, the number of males greatly outweigh the number of females. So when you were first entering training classes, did you at all feel under pressure as if you had to prove yourself that much more because you were a woman trying to make it in this industry?
Well, there's obviously always that little bit of feeling like you're a little bit under pressure, you want the guys to respect you and you want the guys to know that you're in it for the long haul and that you really want to do it. But there was never a time where it was intimidating to me. I've always been the type of person to go into something and just, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it. You have your moments where you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do this. You get stressed out. But there was never a time where, the guys ever made me feel like the guys I was training with ever made me feel like I couldn't do it. If anything, and this might sound bad, there was a couple of times where when I first started doing it, I would look at some of the guys I was training with and I was like, if you can do this, I can do this. There's no way, this kid's going to get in this ring and be able to do this, and I'm not going to be able to do it. So I definitely wouldn't say it ever intimidated me to thinking I couldn't do it. Everybody has their moments where you get a little intimidated about stuff, but there was never a time where I was going to say, no, I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to be able to do this because it's a guy thing. So
in wrestling, there's a big psychological aspect, especially when you're trying to make it in this industry. Some make it very early in this industry, like Mercedes KB recently signed with the WWE, and Sarah Del Rey signed with the WWE after years and years of trying to make it there. So it all just depends on what they're looking for. But what keeps you going knowing that there's definitely no certain direction that your career is guaranteed to go in? How do you prevent yourself from saying, oh, I just wasted all this time with training and it went nowhere, and, you know, you just give up? What keeps you motivated?
I think what keeps me going, because that is very true. You don't know, like, you could spend 10 years training to do this, and then one day they want you, or they could want you after 6 months. It's just like, you know, a hit or miss. Like you said, it's what they're looking for. It could be that they want a blonde today. Tomorrow they want a redhead. Next week they want a brunette. It comes down to that. But I think the things that keep me going definitely are, you know, I have a very supportive family that, you know, tells me, you know, you're going to make it, you have it, you have it, you have it. But another thing that really supports me is I like when I feel like I'm getting to that point where I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever really going to make it, if there's something that's making me feel that way, I just look at the other females around me and the females that are in the industry and the ones that I look up to, and I just look at them and say, okay, you know what? If they can do this, I can do this. There's no reason I can't do this. There's, you know, they're all beautiful. They all have amazing bodies. They all have something so great to bring forth to the table, but why can't I do that? So there's absolutely no reason I shouldn't be able to, and there's no reason I shouldn't be able to make it to that point. And, you know, I have Matt always with me, who's always telling me, he's the first one every single time I have a moment where I'm like, I can't do this, I can't do this. He is the first one to tell me, yes, you can. Yes, you can. There's no reason you can't do this. And it's almost like he is kind of the voice of reason in my head sometimes, because I know in the back of my head I can do it, but sometimes you just need that extra person in your life to tell you that, you know, look at these other girls. There's no reason you cannot do this.
Now, one of the things that's very tough about the wrestling industry, and what fans and I myself don't realize, is that getting into the ring and performing in the match is the final product of all the hard work that workers put into their careers. A lot of the times the hardest things in the industry that you have to deal with is getting the right amount of sleep and dealing with injuries and trying to pay for these medical bills and, you know, dealing with some of the politics that might come along. To you, what advice would you give to people in this industry that may say, oh, I want to be a professional wrestler, but not necessarily know all of what goes into accomplishing that goal?
The advice, just from my, like, you know, I can't speak from a veteran's point of view because I'm only a year in, but just the last year, my own personal just kind of experiences, the advice I would give somebody that wanted to get into this is just don't like overthink things. Don't think that, you know, if you're going into a match like, oh, I'm going to screw this, that's my main problem. I go into things thinking like, oh, this is it. If I screw this match up, this is it. And it's not. It's never it. There's always next time to fix something. There's always next training session to fix things. And, you know, just when you're traveling, just sleep whenever you can. And if you just always be a step ahead of what's going on, especially as a female. Male, this is one thing guys don't understand. As a female, it's harder with shows and stuff like that because we have to have our hair done. We have to have our makeup done. We have to be, you know, prepped. We don't have that. I wish I could just throw oil on myself and just go, but we can't do that. We have to do our makeup. You got to have the eyelashes, the nails, the tanning. Everything has to be, you know, in check. So it's just I would take it one step at a time and just take it all in stride. Don't get too stressed out. Don't get too overwhelmed. I have to listen to my own advice sometimes, but it would just be to not get overwhelmed and don't get anxiety over little things that you shouldn't.
Now, some would argue that due to the recent, you know, sway in the WWE D-list product, that especially with the females in this industry, that wrestling is getting a little superficial when it comes to the looks of how females should be. And many people have differing opinions on this because there are certainly some models out there like Trish Stratus and Michelle McCool that have made into very successful careers. Do you approve of the kind of direction the WWE is swaying the industry in? Because it's almost like their big brother, and in a way, a lot of other companies are just going to listen and follow what they're going to do?
I do, because I believe that, the direction the WWE is taking is, the way they're taking the divas, the way they're modeling them, and in a certain ways, it's working. Whatever they're doing is working. Whatever. I mean, all those girls that they have right now, every single one of them is beautiful. They're all every guy I know that watches the WWE shows like Raw or SmackDown, like every single girl on that show is gorgeous. And at the end of the day, that is what draws guys to wanting to watch the divas. So I think whatever they do is pretty much, it's been working. They've always been on top for a reason.
So getting into more of the performance aspect, you were a manager before you started wrestling, and most notably, you managed, as mentioned, Matt Taven, who fans said you had a very special connection with, and you never stole the spotlight away from him, but you also stood out as your own character at the exact same time. And managing, and it's funny because I actually interviewed a manager the other day, is a dying art in this industry. Not many fans know who a manager is because it's not really explained to them, or they're not really part of the storylines, or they're one-shot, two-shot thing. So to you, and enjoying the success that you had with Matt, what are the secret keys to success to being a good manager, and why should people be interested in managers and what they bring to the table?
I think the secret to having success as a manager is definitely who you're managing, because if you're managing someone that you have chemistry with, and you're managing someone that helps you understand your character and your character as as if you're a couple or if you're friends or however the relationship is in the ring, then that's all that makes it. Because the way, I actually started wrestling, I didn't even think about managing prior to starting wrestling. I just wanted to wrestle. That was it. So I started wrestling, training, and then my trainer was, who at the time was Brian Fury, he was wrestling for Chaotic. That's where I was training. And they were bringing Matt Taven in, and they were like, oh, we want to, start you as a manager. Since you're not ready to wrestle, we want to use you, and we think that you guys would work great together. You guys could build a great, chemistry, character, whatever. So we ended up, that was my very first show that I did with him, was actually last year, September 9th of last year. And since then, it's just built. He's been the only person that I have managed, and it has built on every show, and he helps me so much with every, if something is done wrong or something could be done better. It all depends on your relationship with that person. If you guys can work good together, you can make magic happen. If it's not working, or if personally you don't get along or whatever, it's never going to work. You can't build off of characters together if there's not a personal relationship there. You definitely have to be able to talk to one another and talk about what's going to happen and how the characters are going to evolve and all that. So from day one, it's just kept evolving, and we haven't gotten anything but good feedback off of it.
So while working a match, and especially if you're on the independent scene, there's a big in-the-moment aspect, because a lot of times many of the matches that you may perform in won't even be recorded for later viewing. So once you do a match, a lot of the time, that's it. It's over. It's done with. You can't really look back. And furthermore, the crowd that you perform in front of will never, ever be the same. So that being said, how do you make the best out of each moment in your match and make sure that all the fans go home happy once they leave the event?
We constantly treat, as a manager, I constantly treat it every show as if it's, yes, granted, in the independent scene around here, I think there is a couple of people who I have seen at every single show. No matter what company it is, no matter, if it's here, it's Connecticut, or it's New York, you do have those diehard fans that go everywhere, which is awesome, and they get to know your character, and I feel like they're the ones that, you can get the most reactions out of and stuff like that. But when you're going from place to place, and sometimes you go to a place where you might not really be known. You just have to keep it fresh no matter what. Don't do the same stuff. Try to change it up a little bit. Like, yeah, you have your little, trademarks and certain moves you might do and certain things you might say that you try to get people to remember you by, but you just, try to keep it new, try to keep it something, because there is a lot of people that record things on, cell phones now. They put them on YouTube. So a lot of the stuff is seen on the Internet, but if it's not, you just want to give them a reason to want to come see you at the next place. So you always entertain them as best you can, be as loud as you can, be as, in their face as you can. It's like being in a play. Like, that's the best way I can describe it. Everyone always says, like, oh, how do you do this, how do you do that? It's, you literally treat it as if you're in a play. You go out there with this character in your head. You are that character. Be that character the whole time. If you see someone in the crowd and you're supposed to be a heel, don't try not to laugh at them or, have any kind of communication with them, because you want to keep that character that you're supposed to be so it's real for people.
Now, you mentioned a lot about, just now, your character in professional wrestling. And a character in wrestling can be a very unique one. Sometimes, or a lot of times, I should say, characters in wrestling are just very over-exaggerated, amped-up versions of their own real-life personalities. Or sometimes the thing about wrestling is that someone can try something completely different and completely new and completely weird and have that sell over with the fans. So where do you draw inspiration for your wrestling character? Is it just yourself times 1,000, or is it a family member that, or a situation that happened to you that you draw inspiration from? What's the story behind your in-ring character?
I'd say my character is definitely I think it's just an amped up version of who I am. It's just me exaggerated over and over and over, just with a couple of quirks in there. Like, I'm more of a sneaky type of character. Like, I'll screw anybody over to make sure, Matt gets what I want him to get, and that's a win every single time. So it's a little bit more amped up in that sense, but it's also kind of, how my real life is too, because at the end of the day, in my real life, I would be the same way. I would do anything in my power to make sure that, Matt gets what he wants, and that's just how I would be. But it's just basically me amped up times 20. It's just more exaggerated. It's more loud. It's more in your face. I'm not in love with myself, not into myself the way my character is, but in a little bit of a way I kind of am, because, I'm a girl. I like to dress up and do all that stuff, but I would definitely say my character is just me times 5,000.
So part of success and being successful in this industry is definitely knowing how to promote yourself and being noticed by the right people. And sometimes this can be a very difficult task for some of the industry, because sometimes to get noticed, you may have to, I wouldn't necessarily say, backstab or anything like that, but you may have to just do what it takes to get to the top if that's where you want to get. Or sometimes it's just a matter of being in the right place at the right time. And there are a lot of politics in wrestling, and a lot of fans don't realize how hard it is to keep yourself composed backstage when there's this animosity or all this tension of all these different people wanting to be in the same exact top spot. So, and this is one thing that Chaotic teaches you is backstage etiquette. So, to those just breaking into the industry, what advice would you give to them to kind of make sure that they're always respectful and they always make sure that they're never on anyone's bad side backstage?
I had, that was one of the things I had. My very first day of Chaotic was actually, one of the owners was there, and that was actually the first thing I learned, just the etiquette, just do. When you walk in a locker room backstage, you shake every single person's hand. If you don't know them, you introduce yourself to them. If you don't know, even like, and it's not like that in the real world. Like, it's kind of, if you don't know someone, you wouldn't really just kind of walk up to them. You feel like that's kind of, you're intruding on their space or you're being rude. But in the wrestling world, you walk right up to people, you introduce yourself, you make sure they know who you are so that, you're approachable. You make, if it's a promoter or if it's an owner or if it's a big name that's on the show or, a former superstar, you just say, it's a, pleasure to be on a show with you, thank you for your time, anything like that. And if you're in a locker room for the first time, don't make yourself known too much. Like, you say hi to everybody, but, don't be loud, don't be obnoxious, don't run around, don't ever touch anybody else's stuff. That's a big thing, it's actually pretty awesome that this is the first time in my entire life that I've been backstage for something in any situation and no one touches your stuff. You can leave stuff, just hanging out of your bag and no one's going to touch it. It's just it's a big respect thing amongst wrestlers. Don't touch anybody's stuff. Don't steal anything. I haven't had anything like that happen, which is really cool to have that kind of respect with everyone. But, just make sure you say hi to everyone. Don't make yourself too known. Don't be obnoxious. And, don't talk about people, the typical stuff like that. But the main thing I learned was make sure you say hi to everyone and shake everyone's hand. And when you leave, you always say bye to every single person and you shake every single person's hand. And you don't leave a show early. You always wait till the end of the show, see if they need help with ring crew or packing up or whatever, and then you say bye to every single person and then you leave. Even if it's family members, you say bye to them too.
Well, definitely, and thank you for that good advice, and I'm sure many people will follow that because it's definitely, I would say it's definitely more, common respect advice that I think can be applied to any industry. But seeing as that you're young in your actual wrestling career, because you've been managing for a little longer than you've been wrestling, they always say that you can't really have, whether it be a personal or a global or a nationwide revolution, without evolution. So as you progress in your career, where would you like to see not only yourself, but your character as far as development goes?
Well, of course, I think every single person who is in wrestling would say they see themselves in the WWE. That's what they want. That's what they're here for. That's, what they're aspiring to get to. That's, so everyone can see what you do and you can feel like your work's paying off and you can just evolve from there and do more and more and more once you're in there. But in terms of my character, hopefully I can kind of, I know, if you get to a bigger company, sometimes things change and, they change your name or whatever, but hopefully my character can kind of stay where it is but just get better and better and better, because I do like the character that I have kind of built for myself. I think it's comedic, but it also has a little bit of sneakiness to it. It's a little manipulative, but it is funny and it's entertaining. So hopefully I'm lucky enough to be able to just kind of keep building on that so that it can just keep getting better and better and more entertaining.
Now, before we get to how fans can contact you, I've always heard that you can never really truly be innovative in this industry with the moves that you do, especially because they just stem from moves that another person, say, is already established. And even so, it can be difficult because you can be using someone else's move on the independent scene, say, and not even really notice or realize it because you don't know that person or you don't know his or her work. So how do you kind of draw the line between trying to be innovative and yet not really, really noticing that you can't truly be innovative? Do you add your own personal flair to your moves, or what's the story behind what you do in the ring?
Well, I do kind of understand what you're saying with you really can't be innovative because someone has done it before you, but I slightly disagree because I believe in my personal journey, I want to be innovative in a sense that I kind of want to take on that future, the Lita types that were, a couple of years ago, but I want to take it to a next level. I want to be the girl that wrestles like the guys, like not just in the moves department, but in, the psychological aspect, the work aspect. I want to be able to, basically get in a ring with a guy and not be able to tell who, like, you know, if you were to just have it be like silhouette of people, like, who's the guy here? Like, I want to be able to be that good, and I want to be able to take my moves a whole notch up, because I do have that athletic base. I do have the gymnastics base with the tumbling and stuff like that. So I do think it can happen, because I'm already at a point where I'm only a year in, and I'm super new to everything. I'm always going to be learning, but I'm still really learning at this point. I'm just a baby learning how to crawl. But, you know, I'm only a year in, and I can already do some things that guys can't do. So hopefully I can just build on that and make it better and better and better, and hopefully one day I can be an innovator and have a little girl look at me and say, oh, I want to be like that.
Okay, so this is one of the toughest questions that I always ask all of my interviewees, and this kind of always stumps them, because it's a hard question in its depth, but at its core it seems simple. If you could sum up your experience in professional wrestling so far using just one word, what would that one word be?
One word. If I could sum it up in one word so far, I would say surprising.
And finally, how can fans or bookers contact you for fan mail or other inquiries if they want to reach you?
Okay, you can reach me through my email, which is KaseyLive@AOL.com. It's spelled KAYCEE live@AOL.com. And I'm on Twitter at the real Kasey Ray, just KASEYRAY. And that's about it. On Facebook, I'm just facebook.com/Kasey Ray.
Well, fantastic, and thank you so much for your time, Kasey. And I know that you're still very young in your career, but I can tell that you have a bright future ahead of you if you just keep at it. So I wish you all the best of luck in your endeavors, and certainly keep at it, because I know you entertain a lot of fans out there. So thank you very much again.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Well, thanks to everyone else for tuning into this interview. Be sure to check out www.wrestling-divas, and that's divas with a Z, .webs.com, for more exclusive content and interviews, and be sure to check out Wrestling Divas at Wrestling Divas on Twitter, again with a Z at the end, for all of the latest updates.